Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MedTech Ventures podcast, where investment meets innovation in the world of medical technology. I'm your host, Craig Townsend, and I'm delighted to be joined today by the CEO and co-founder at CeraThrive, Cera Turner. Cera, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on, Craig.
No worries. I was really interested to get you on the podcast. I think that red light therapy and the different indications associated with red light therapy is a very exciting application in the wellness and also the medical space. So super excited to have CeraThrive featured here. I guess let's start, Cera, by telling us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into the medical technology space and the wellness space?
Sure. Well, I actually started off in pharmaceuticals, was kind of my intro. I started off in device development. So looking at, actually I was working in asthma. So I was looking at developing different asthma delivery devices. And I did that for a number of years at Glaxo. I did various other things for drug companies, vitamin analysis, all kinds of things. But it was really there that I began to sort of see the limitations of that approach. And then I went off and did a nutrition degree. I moved to California. I did clinical neuroscience. So I kind of have had a bit of a walk from very orthodox pharmaceutical. Then I went into kind of fairly esoteric kind of consciousness interface devices.
Wow.
And now I feel like I've found a middle ground with photobiomodulation, because it's actually very evidence-based. But of course, we still don't really officially know what light actually is in a kind of how it relates to biology. So I found myself a very nice middle ground right now.
You have a really strong academic background. You've already talked about the nutrition side, the wellness side, and then the clinical neuroscience side. So red light therapy, before we dive too deep into it, is the theory that you can supercharge cells, right? It penetrates the skin to a level, and it's been used for everything from anti-aging to reducing swelling and soreness and improving recovery. So talk to us a little bit about the science behind the red light therapy.
Yeah, it is actually very interesting, but actually from a certain point of view, it's fairly basic. We are diurnal mammals that have evolved on a planet where we have had, up until a couple of hundred years ago, very direct relationship with the sun and with the wavelengths of light it produces, and our biology reflects that. So with red light therapy, it's the wavelengths that you would normally see at sunrise and sunset. Because of the position of the sun in relation to the earth, we get these longer wave red light wavelengths at those particular times, and so our bodies have evolved to do certain things at different times of day depending on what kind of light we're exposed to. So near infrared light you'd see in the morning, it starts different kinds of hormone production, it initiates certain healing cascades, and then in the evening the same thing. The body is preparing for sleep, for that healing mode. We're again exposed to those red light wavelengths. So really what we're doing is with red light therapy devices is we're just replacing that deficiency that we all have now globally as a species with our indoor lives. We have a chronic deficiency in these wavelengths of light. But obviously the biology, we can be very granular about it, and I can talk about the exact enzyme in the mitochondrial matrix. But I think maybe the main point for people to get across is, yes, our bodies are very transparent to these long wave red light wavelengths, and they do provide energy in the form of ATP, and they do provide the body with a signal to initiate healing.
There's been a lot of good clinical evidence out there about the benefits, but I do feel regulators are a little bit slow to adopt. But before we talk about the Cera system, talk to us a little bit about your approach to certification and adoption.
Yes. So, yes, currently as an industry, we are facing a lot of regulatory hurdles. And at the moment, the FDA, the main kind of device regulator in the States, of course, we have an EU directive also, and we have, every country has its own body. But there's no actual official category for red light therapy for certain applications. So at the moment, we can make claims for wound healing, increased microcirculation, various claims associated with pain. They are approved, and so those claims can be made. But other claims like brain health, gut health, those kinds of things, they're still no category for those. So no claims can be made for those, although the evidence is building. And I think really it's just a matter of time before companies really get to that level where it just can't be ignored, and we have to get the regulatory bodies to take notice. And it's not just that there isn't sufficient evidence, there just aren't the people within those bodies who are prepared to take on this kind of technology. So it's, you know, we could gather as much evidence as we want, but if somebody in that body is not ready to take on the data, then we still can't get there. But I think the landscape is changing. You know, a lot of people, certainly post-COVID, have started to take health upon themselves, which is great. So a lot of these devices can be sold very legitimately as wellness devices, and that also gives a lot of scope for people. You know, we can talk about brain wellness, gut wellness, we can talk about moving somebody from a baseline to better, rather than kind of get bogged down with named disease states, which are totally off record. But I think for most people, going from a baseline to better is good enough.
Absolutely, and there's more and more devices which, you know, to use a pharmaceutical term, are being used off-label, right? There's devices that are being used to treat conditions that don't necessarily have the cleared indication via the regulators to treat that condition, and like we said previously, red light therapy is being used to treat a whole host of different things. You know, I've seen devices from everything from pain relief to acne control to gut health and gut stimulation. So with that in mind, you know, we've danced around it a little bit. Sarah, tell us about the Cera system. What is it?
So yes, the Cera system is a dual device system that targets the gut and the brain. And this was really born from, like you say, I have a clinical neuroscience background, and I was living in California, and I was actually looking at structured waters, how light structured water. So kind of a little bit, you know, not so much involved in the biology piece. But I began to think, you know, if we can potentially structure water with light, and the brain is mostly water, you know, why don't we just cut out the middleman and just structure the water in our bodies directly? And to do that, we need a slightly longer wave light. And then I started to wonder if it had already been done. You know, are people already using light to target the brain? So because I do have a science background, I was able to get on some studies to look at exactly that. And I did data collection on an Alzheimer's study. And a Parkinson's study. And it became very clear that, yes, this was actually having a positive impact on the symptoms for these people. But at the time, around about 2018, there wasn't a really friendly device. You know, a lot of these devices were for research. They were like these big, heavy, clunky devices, lots of fans. You needed to kind of have quite a high power supply for them. So my original idea was just to make something simple. And actually, I didn't have the idea to start the company. I just wanted to have something that I could recommend to my friends and family. I also have a gene that predisposes to Alzheimer's. You know, I'm always after things that are going to improve brain health. Like I say, not just for me, but for people I talk to. But that did lead me to eventually led me to a Dutch company that are the manufacturers, who are now my business partners. And so we had an agreement, okay, they would make it as long as I front the company, which is kind of this strange route to entrepreneurship that I've had. But yes, it's quite a sophisticated system now. It's a headband, but I can also pulse the light, so we can also look at neuromodulation as well as photobiomodulation. Wow. And a body panel. And the body panel is very simple. It's just to get light into the gut, because a lot of the science now is showing for most chronic diseases and most chronic brain diseases, they do tend to start in the gut. And we have this connection between our gut and brain. And the more that we can heal the gut and ensure that we're kind of reducing systemic inflammation in the body by healing the gut, we've got a much better chance of dealing with these brain conditions. So yeah, it's a dual device red light system, 4 wavelengths of red and near infrared with pulsing.
Is that what makes the Cera system special then? I first became aware of Cera at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2024, and I was walking the floor and I saw the presentation, and it was really, really interesting. There were a lot of people there that were doing red light therapy for, you know, improved sleep, improved healing. What sort of makes the Cera system special? Is it that you know, the gut indication that you've got?
I think that's one of the main things, is that we have got this kind of systemic approach. We're targeting the body as a holistic system, rather than kind of trying to compartmentalize different things and just focus on one thing, because ultimately that's how the body works. The body is nested systems within systems, and the more we can kind of treat the body in the way that it's actually behaving, I think the greater chance we have. But also I use 4 wavelengths, and most devices that you see either use 1 or sometimes 2, but I'm using 4 because there are a lot of light receivers in the body. Some are very, very well documented, some not so. But I think that's just kind of an evolution of the technology. So I use 4 wavelengths on the headband to target all the different light receivers potentially that we have on the brain, on the surface of the brain, and actually on the outside even, the skin and the blood supply. And like I say, I have pulsing. But the other thing with my pulsing, which is very different to other people who do pulsing, is that I do a variable pulsing, because the body also likes to have variation. It gives a resilience. It's like you've probably heard of heart rate variability, where the heart isn't just beating like a metronome. The heart has variation in its beat to beat, which allows you to react. I may, something may fly through this window now, and I need to speed my heart rate and do something, or maybe I need to just chill out and listen to what you're saying. But if I have variation within my heartbeat, it gives me that flexibility. The same with the brain. So when we're pulsing light to the brain, we're not just kind of giving it 40 hertz, we're kind of giving it a random frequency around 40 hertz or 10 hertz or whatever kind of pulsing that we're giving it. So like I say, actually for a very small bit of kit, it's quite sophisticated in the technology we have in there, although it's nothing that the body doesn't understand. It's just light and pulsed light.
Absolutely. It's a really, really interesting platform. And like I said, when I was first researching red light therapy, and I was looking at it for pain relief or opioid-free pain relief, which is a big challenge, particularly in the United States. And a lot of people that I spoke with at the Consumer Electronics Show were talking about that. And I think that's why Cera really stood out to me, because yes, pain relief is one indication of red light therapy, but like you said, it's a control system for the body and general well-being. So really, really exciting times. So talk to us a little bit then. You said about you partnered with this Dutch manufacturer and you're bringing some of the clinical side of things. What's been your biggest challenge so far in bringing the Cera system to market? Has it been adoption? Has it been education? Is this a brand new world for many of your end users? Talk to us about your challenges.
Yeah, well, I think I've had different challenges at different stages.
Sure.
And so really it's kind of depend where we're at. When we were in the production phase, the year before last, we had some big challenges with chip shortages in China. I'm sure like a lot of people who are in consumer electronics will kind of relate to that. So we had a few hold-ups then, which meant that the product was actually late on delivery, was kind of out of our hands. So then we were having to take pre-orders and keep people kind of happy while their pre-order was the phase was a little bit longer than we anticipated. So, that took a lot of kind of just nurturing those early adopters. Now we're that's now, like you say, thankfully we're now in full production. All of that is going smooth. Of course, the tariffs now are a challenge for our US market. So that is something where I'm sort of waiting to see a little bit what happens with that. But at the moment, I have stocked the warehouse in Miami, so I'm all right for now, but that will be a challenge, and that will be something that I'm sure everybody is grappling with. And of course, the fact that we do have these regulatory hurdles, we can't really talk about what the device would perhaps be most useful for. So in the background, I can do lots of research into neurodegeneration, into motor neurons, into Parkinson's, into Alzheimer's, but I can't actually talk about that in relation to the product and marketing. So it's a big hurdle to get enough information for people so that they understand that this is a wellness device and it is to help them manage symptoms, rather than how people are used to being spoken to, which is about, okay, what do I do about my X? What do I do about my dementia, my whatever they're used to saying? So yes, it is a little bit of a difficulty with the education piece and with the marketing piece. But I think, like I say, I think people now are used to kind of thinking about their health and wellness and longevity rather than, only thinking about kind of just not being sick, not having a named disease.
Let's dive into that a little bit, because the wellness versus medical device argument has never been hotter, whether it's in the US or whether it's in Europe. And I've said it on this podcast many, many times. I have been advising my clients and my contacts to actually not seek certification until a commercial opportunity arises.
Yes.
Getting certified is expensive and takes a very, very long time, and you need a huge amount of data to achieve that certification. But you're in a very interesting space. You're in a space which is, I don't want to call them bad actors. There are devices on the market which may not have as good clinical evidence as your product has. How do you navigate that marketing nightmare? How do you cut through that noise? I guess part of it is having people like yourself who do have very, very strong, credible backgrounds, right?
Yeah, and the kind of the brain photobiomodulation, the brain red light therapy is a small group of companies, and we all know each other. So we actually, I think there's a lot of collaboration within the industry. I mean, obviously we're all kind of competitors to one extent, but also, there are a lot of meetups, there's an association that people attend, there's a lot of sharing of data, there's a lot of sharing of research. So I think from that point of view, we kind of know who isn't doing the good research, so we can all back each other up with regards to that. And actually most of the players for brain red light therapy are doing some wonderful stuff, each in our own kind of little way. And then the way that I've started to cut through this whole noise about medical claims is I've made up my own term. I made up my own term called RISE, which stands for Reduced Infrared Spectrum Syndrome. Because then I can actually talk about something. I'm talking about, you're suffering from a deficiency of near infrared is what you're suffering from. I'm not even going to talk about diseases or names. And it just enables me to kind of speak to people in a direct way that kind of just sidesteps all of the medical hurdles.
That's a good piece of advice there. I think if you are a first to market company, I'm not saying that CeraThrive is first to market, but if you are a pioneer, then carve something out and be your own sounding board is strong. I'm also really happy that you talked about partnerships and collaboration.
Yes.
I've been delighted on this podcast that I don't think a single person I've spoken with has talked about competition and fierce competition. It's all been, we're all in this together, and there's plenty of opportunity for us to all succeed if we all support one another. So I like that, yes. Sarah. It's a nice message.
It's great. And just think how many people have got neurodegeneration, how many people have got IBS. I don't think there's a shortage of audience. I don't think we all have to fight for our little market share. I think, there's enough people that need help that there's space for certainly everybody so far and more. So, I'm very positive about that. And I actually do call a lot of the other CEOs of these red light therapy brain companies friends now. So, I kind of feel like that is something that this... because I also think it's kind of a nice thing that we're doing. We're all trying really to find solutions for these illnesses. It's not like we're big corporations who are kind of just looking to make massive profits. I think everybody in this space could probably do something else and make a lot more money if that was their goal. So we're all kind of people of a similar mentality, sure. which is great, and hopefully that will be something that carries this kind of tech forward, because it's people who are really there for the common good. It's not people there to make huge amounts of money, for sure.
Absolutely. It's for the patients, right? There's a reason that a lot of us work in the medical technology space. It's because we have stories and we have a want to do good and to genuinely help mankind. So it's really, really positive. It's an investment podcast. We talk about the funding journey. Perhaps you can talk to us a little bit, Sarah, about this partnership and about how you sort of secured the first funding and the funding journey to date.
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate in my business partners. So as I said, my business partners are the manufacturing company. So they are a big manufacturer of all kinds of light products. But when I took this idea to them, they were very, very keen on collaborating. You know, one of the directors had a grandmother who was suffering from dementia. You know, they kind of understood the problem and wanted to be part of the solution. So, yes, it's a Dutch company, but they have factories in China and in India. And again, that was something that I felt was very, very important. You know, one of the first things that they did was invited me to tour the facility, to meet everybody on the team, to meet the production manager, to meet the project manager. So from a point of view of funding, that company is the company that has funded all of the production costs. So I've been very fortunate with my business partners there, and they continue to support me now going forward, you know, although now we're kind of bootstrapping. We haven't taken any external investment from this point, because we've managed, you know, at the moment now the revenue's coming in and we're able to do everything we need to do at this stage without any external funding. I mean, that will probably change going forward as we look to expand and grow, and now we're in the scaling phase. But certainly up to now, it's been very nice that we have been able to do it all with internal funding.
That's brilliant. Again, it's another example of partnerships and
Yes.
how partnerships are key for success.
Yes.
And like you say, you're generating revenue, which is amazing news, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But if you ever think of scaling, mass scaling, and if you ever want to turn that dial up, and I've said this on a couple of previous episodes, there's an opportunity to go out and seek that investment in order to shoot for the moon and reach that next evolution of your journey. So very, very good, very good. Let's talk about the commercialization then. You said that you're generating revenue now, but you also talked about the challenges that hit during COVID and the chip shortage that I think the world faced. Mm-hmm. So how have you approached commercialization today? How have you been marketing these, selling these, getting these in the hands of end users?
Yeah, so initially with our first kind of batch, I did have quite a big audience already, because I've spent a long time in the biohacking space.
Okay.
With various other companies, and just because I do have just such an interest in this kind of, it used to be called alternative health, there's biohacking, you know, we're kind of migrating into longevity, but so I had quite a big audience from that space already. I had a podcast, Rebel Scientist, which, you know, I interview various biohackers, and because I was involved in kind of the research side, I also had some connections with some of the big academic institutions too. Mm-hmm. So I was able to just really utilise that network for that first batch of pre-orders, which is really what got us off the ground. From then, I do a lot of podcasts, you know, things like this is great for raising awareness, you know, and I now have a lot of word of mouth, and various different things that I didn't expect. Like I have a guy in England, actually, he wrote to me because he lived in the town next to my town, and he had motor neuron, and he wanted to use one of my trial devices. So yeah, sure, I gave him a trial device. We didn't really know what to expect because, you know, that's a fairly intense illness, but actually over the course of like 6 to 9 months, he's had amazing success to the point where it's been picked up by BBC, Newcastle. He's been on different radio stations. He actually posts his own journey. So it's coming from him, you know, it's not coming from me as such, but so we have now small cohorts of different people who we are guiding with, like I say, we're not treating their condition, but we're helping them raise their general wellness, and then we're also collecting data with like Durham University, various academic places where we can then gather that data to present it in a more clinical way. So that has also helped boost our sales. And then events. I do a lot of events. I'm probably in the States once a month at this point. Like you saw me at CES. I do a lot of these big events and talks, and I think that really just gives people reassurance, you know, that we are out there talking about it, doing it, and, you know, we are stable enough that we can have a presence at a lot of these major biohacking events, longevity events, and, like you said, consumer electronic events.
I think personal brand is really important. I think if you can build credibility and confidence and a network, then you are out there putting yourself out there and saying there is this technology, it is helping people. And I think the second half of it, like you said, is is almost influencer marketing, right? I'm not saying that this individual with motor neuron disease has 700,000 Instagram followers. That's influencer marketing in a different stance, but they are somebody with a condition that wanted to try your product, and actually their life has been improved significantly by using the device. So they're now out there telling their story, and maybe there's going to be more people that are in their position that again could benefit from this. So two great pillars, two great foundations is personal brand, and then I'm going to call it influencer marketing again. It is in the basic sense of the word.
Yes. They call it something else, don't they? User experience marketing or something. I don't know. My team's they kind of have two different categories. But the other thing also now is, I think, because we kind of tend to think a little bit like America-centric or UK-centric, but actually there are other big markets that are very, very interested in red light therapy. So I did recently get a distributor in Dubai, and I have one in Mexico, and a lady in Colombia who does very well. So, also there are a lot of other markets where people are very keen to embrace this technology. Even like India, I have clinics and things opening up in India. I think this kind of technology does lend itself well to countries where perhaps drugs are a little bit more scarce. That is another driver for this red light technology. That there's all kinds of interesting markets opening up. I'm just about to write a pitch deck for the space health market. Wow. Because more and more investment is being put into that industry, and of course you can't fill a ship up with drugs to take there. You need something that's going to be effective, but it's not going to take up a lot of space in space. So there are other big markets opening up where I am starting to see a little bit of interest. So I think all of those things is going to help to kind of scale these, not just my company, but these kind of innovative tech companies.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We'll come on to the future in a minute, but just to touch on other countries and territories getting interested in red light space. I was at the Consumer Electronics Show again this year, and one of the busiest stands was, I won't name the company, but they had red light chambers. They were pods that you sat in, full body pods, and they were $50,000 to $150,000 a piece. And they were inundated with traffic throughout the entire 4-day event. And there are certain territories that have a lot of money that are investing that money. Like you said, if you can get that in a clinic, if you can get a pod in a clinic and just filter patients through, then brilliant. You can provide a community service. So really, really popular.
And it's surprising that some of these countries where you wouldn't expect them to need red light therapy so much. I mean, I was in Abu Dhabi recently, and I was thinking, well, surely you've got enough light here. But it's so hot there, people don't go outside. Some people said for months on end, they kind of just they stay indoors with the air conditioning on. Yeah. And so, you all of a sudden you have people with these light deficiencies, even in these countries where you wouldn't expect it. So that was very interesting. And actually that was a market where I was having to do a lot more of the basic explaining about light, whereas like places like America, a lot of people have seen it in gyms and things now, but those countries not so much yet. So I think that, that's a huge potential there, just kind of waiting for the market to expand.
Where is your hottest market right now, Sarah? What can you share with us? Which countries are adopting this technology? Is it the US primarily?
It's the US because that's really where I've put my focus. That's where a lot of the big events are. I lived there. I have like a kind of community there. I have a little bit of a base in Miami, which I share with some other red light companies, talking about collaboration to make that kind of easier. So we kind of have a base there. But also UK, also Australia. And like I say, some growing markets, some surprising ones like India. I get a lot of people messaging me from India, and then just recently Scandinavia started to come on board a little bit. So I think the US is so vast, isn't it, that kind of takes over the market. But if you were kind of to do it per rota for the population, I think some of these other markets are also just as relevant.
Absolutely. It's really, really interesting to hear your thoughts. So let's talk about the future then. Where is the red light therapy market going, in your opinion? And I guess what does that mean for yourself, for CeraThrive, but for other companies operating in the space?
I think, well, certainly the evidence is growing. So I think it's only a matter of time before we start to get medical device approvals for named conditions. And then once that happens, and they can be prescribed, that completely changes how people use these devices and perceive them, which is a big part of usage. And then, of course, dare I say the AI word, people are looking to maybe integrate different ways of doing bespoke treatments, protocols using AI. So you could maybe take somebody's metrics and then provide a bespoke protocol. So I think that's definitely an interesting space where everybody's actually trying to put a lot of time right now. But from my point of view, just getting the technology out there and recognised and used as a first point of this is what you need to do before you try a pharmaceutical remedy. That's kind of where I put my mind and focus. I'm a great believer of, you just have to kind of create the movement yourself, gather people around who have like-minded thinking, and kind of just force, you kind of just force something to happen just with your own kind of determination. So I do think that it will be the first line of treatment for a lot of illnesses going forward. But of course, I think bespoke treatments, using protocols that are based on algorithms, is definitely where everybody's heading.
Is that exciting to you? Are you interested in the AI space? I don't want to talk about it too much. I mean, it's my passion is in the digital therapeutics and AI side, but I get that it's seen as a novelty for many people. But I guess what excites you, Sarah? What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I'm much more on the kind of lower tech things. I think if you look around, for a lot of people, that's icing on the cake. They just need to have good sleep, good food, good light, good relationships. If people had all of that sorted, then maybe I would say, yeah, for sure, let's kind of use an AI to kind of see exactly how we can tweak your protocol to get it just right for you. But certainly, a lot of the people I interact with, they just need... I just want to get light into them, for us. I just want to kind of start at that base level.
Yeah.
But that's not to say I'm not excited by AI and what it's going to be able to do. I mean, I'm daily amazed by the developments that are happening in AI, and the things that I'm able to do and how I can accelerate my learning, my understanding, how we could potentially use all of this tech. I mean, we all know there's all different kinds of metrics we can now gather from the body. I have a wearable that I've had for a long time, and I kind of have let it tick by in the background. Oh, that's interesting. But now I'm starting to see, okay, how can we really integrate all of these different bits of information to really kind of elevate our health and our consciousness and the whole thing? But it's not that kind of tech piece I don't focus on. Like I say, I'm much more just trying to get the basics,
Sure.
Light, water, food, relationships. Okay, great. Now let's go to the next level. But certainly, I think everything's going to change. I think everything's going to change in a few years because of AI. I mean, you can see it. It's very apparent. My day is totally different to how it was a year ago. I use AI for almost every aspect of my working life, if not at the moment my kind of health life.
Sure. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but you talked a little bit about biohacking. I have read significant papers and articles about red light therapy's role in anti-aging.
Yeah.
That is certainly a high growth area as far as investment and technology is concerned. What can you talk about the future of, I guess, anti-aging and wellness in the cell rejuvenation space with red light therapy?
Yeah, I think the longevity anti-aging space is huge. That's I don't know how many events I could go to if I went to every longevity event. Probably 2 a day. But I think one of the main things that's coming out of all that research is that your mitochondria, which are these very small organelles in your cell, that are responsible for a lot of things. We know they're the powerhouse of the cell, but they're also involved in apoptosis, autophagy, all of these mechanisms that the body has in order to, clean up dead cells or to kind of proliferate the good cells. So they're becoming very, very important topics in longevity, this kind of mitochondrial medicine. Now, red light therapy that is exactly what it is. We are targeting primarily the mitochondria. So I haven't been to any longevity event where they haven't talked about red light at the moment, because I think it's one of the very simple and basic things you can do to improve the health of your mitochondria, which will potentially be one of the things you can do to extend your lifespan. And then you can also use it in conjunction with the other things. People talk a lot about stem cells, and I've recently read a lot of papers about how red light therapy can help with stem cell proliferation, differentiation, and migration. So, as people start to take on board these other therapies, like stem cell therapy starting to get more and more popular, combining that with red light is also going to be able to enhance those protocols. So I see red light therapy having a huge role in this whole longevity and anti-aging space. And actually, from my point of view, this is why I am so determined to kind of focus on the brain. Because longevity, we want to live longer, but do you want to live longer if your brain's not good? From my point of view, I can't, that's definitely not for me. I only want longevity if I'm kind of healthy with a good brain. So from my point of view, making sure we're bringing that into the conversation, we don't want to extend lifespans just for the sake of it and have a lot of people, who may be cognitively impaired and, not having fun. What you want to do is have good brain health with longevity. So that's Absolutely. Why I think the red light space, and particularly focusing on the brain, is going to be more and more in that conversation.
I think it sounds like a very another interesting indication for red light therapy. You talked about the stem cell programs that are currently being run. I know they are very popular in the US, particularly for athletes. I too am excited to see the role that red light therapy has to play in the future of health there.
Yeah.
To close us out, Cera, one piece of advice. You are a MedTech founder. What could you say to other people out there who are either at the start of their journey or midway through?
I would say one of the things is, one, being very clear on your goal and being something that you really want to see happen, because actually, it is a slog, and so it has to be something that you really want and need to see happen. I think there has to be that passion there. I know that's a bit of a corny thing to say, and the other thing is, I found talking to other people in the space where I have unfortunately seen them fail in a lot of these businesses, because it is tough, is having that good relationship with the manufacturer, and being able to, if you're worried about something, just get on a plane and go. From my point of view, that's been crucial, and I've found at certain crucial points where things have got a little bit hairy, to be able to just go and directly see what's going on, speak to the people in charge, get that reassurance, and kind of deliver your message so that it's being received. That to me has been crucial. And like I say, unfortunately, I've talked to a few people who've kind of fallen by the wayside because they've had arguments with the manufacturer, or they haven't delivered, or they just haven't been able to communicate. So that's, for what it's worth, that's my kind of 2 pennies. Be very passionate and have very good relationships with the people you're working with.
That's great advice, though. I think passion is so important. You've got to be doing it for the right reasons, because if you don't care, the world will know that you don't care. Everyone will understand that you're not really in it, so why should they be in it? So that's always a great tip. And you've got to build good relationships with, I don't want to call it the supply chain, but your partners and those that you rely on in order to fulfill orders and build great quality products. Your product is the most important thing, so you've got to have full confidence that is going to be the best version of itself. So I think they're great tips, Cera. They're great tips. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Cera. Really appreciate your time, and thanks everyone for listening to the MedTech Ventures podcast. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Craig. Thank you.